My fellow Singaporeans, I'm going to talk this afternoon about the PAP strategies for building a more inclusive society. It's at the core of our agenda, for Singapore. It's not new, but we've significantly stepped up our strategies for inclusivity, a fairer society, and for lesser inequalities at different stages of life in the last 10 years. Significantly stepped up, but there's much more to do in future. COVID makes this more important rather than a less important issue, because COVID is becoming a major social crisis in many countries around the world. It's fracturing societies because it's impacting some people much more than others. It's leading to a loss of hope in large parts of the population, particularly younger people in many countries. And with slow growth that's going to come out of COVID, it's going to lead to greater tensions between people. And we must avoid that. We must avoid that. We must not only avoid the social fractures coming out of COVID, but we've got to build a society with a stronger social compact. And we can do it. The aim of all our strategies, economic, social, is to have a more fair and just society where young people have hope regardless of what social backgrounds they come from, regardless of who they were born to, regardless of how they start off life, where everyone can advance in their careers, regardless of what qualifications they start with, and where our seniors can look forward to living life fully in retirement and living life with a sense of security. And a society that tempers inequalities at every stage of life through government actions and community actions. That's our aim. That's what an inclusive society has to be, where the young have hope, everyone advances in the course of their careers, and the elderly look forward to full lives and lives with some security. It is not just a set of goals, not just about pious statements, not just a set of political declarations. This is about real programs that we keep improving, learning over time what works. Never perfect, but constant improvement. And this is about programs that can last into the next generation, because building an inclusive society is a never-ending game. It's not a short game. It's not something you achieve in 1 year, not even 5 years. It has to be continuous, dedicated effort with passion, with careful design of schemes to achieve the maximum impact, but critically, schemes, programs that can be sustained into our children's generation and beyond. An inclusive society has to last. It must never be for show. We're achieving real progress, but there's a lot more to do at every stage of life. And I will talk about what we are doing when people are very young, with the kids. I'll talk about what we're doing in working life, and I'll talk about what we're doing for our seniors in the retirement years. Each of these are serious topics, and I hope you'll stay with me for a while I talk through them and explain why we're designing our schemes the way they are, why they have a good chance of working, and why we have to work together as a community. Because it's not just about government, but it's about what the government does to support the community and what the community itself does to take responsibility for building an inclusive society. So let me start with the young. Social mobility is what Singapore is about. It has been about and has to remain what Singapore is about. And it starts from the youngest years. Most of life's inequalities start when kids are at a very young age. And we have to do a lot more to reduce life's inequalities by intervening when kids are young, working with the families, working with professionals and social work professionals and others, and giving everyone a chance to have hope, to catch up regardless of where they start from. It requires a sense of realism, and it requires passion. I say realism because many countries have found that it's extremely difficult to lift social mobility, particularly as societies become more advanced and things settle in society. A lot of money has gone into it in many countries, but the results have been very limited in the US, in the UK, in Europe. It is a difficult task. But that realism has to be accompanied with passion, dedication, perseverance. As Minister Desmond Lee put it recently, it just means we need deeper interventions, deeper partnerships on the ground with social service professionals, deeper partnerships with families to help unshackle them from their challenges, and a greater sense of responsibility on the part of all of us to want every kid, regardless of where they start, to have a good start and the best chance in life. And that's our approach, basically. We are providing opportunities for all. We are raising quality at every stage of a kid's life, preschool, in fact, even before preschool, providing quality programs in the neighborhood, ensuring that our quality schools move even higher. But it's not just about broad-based quality and not just about meritocracy, because meritocracy enables social mobility, but it doesn't assure us of social mobility. It has to be something more. It has to involve deeper interventions to help those who start with less. And that's what we're doing. It starts with the earliest years, which are critical. The scientists will tell us that. The earliest years are critical. That's when the brain develops, that's when your basic instincts are formed. We are doubling our expenditure on the preschool sector over the next few years. It's a major effort, but it's not just the resources, it's not just the dollars and cents. We are raising the quality of the preschool sector as a whole. It used to be a marketplace of preschools with a small government-supported component. Even 8 years ago, about 30% of the preschool sector was government-supported, the rest was market-based. In 5 years' time, 80% of the preschool sector will be government-supported, with our anchor operators, PCF Sparkle Tots, My First School, eBridge, and others, as well as other partner operators. Government-supported so that costs are affordable, but very importantly, so that we have a very high level of quality. We've upgraded the whole preschool profession, teaching profession, and care profession. Pay has gone up, but career prospects are now far better in the preschool sector. We've started the National Institute for Early Childhood Development, just like the NIE for school teachers, to also raise standards and spread high quality across the system. It's a major effort. But beyond that high base, we also now have deeper interventions. Kids Start is a critical program. We started a few years ago. We'll have another 5,000 kids going through Kids Start in the next few years. Major effort, not just on the part of government, but community. Bringing in volunteers, bringing in social service organizations on the ground. It's a learning journey by itself, Kids Start, because we are learning what works best. But we are determined to make every effort to help kids who start off with low-income families to have hope in life, to have confidence, and to enter primary school brimming with enthusiasm. It can be done. We are extending this through the school system. We already have a very good school system, one of the best in the world. The PISA results are instructive. We know that Singapore ends up at the top of the tables, reading, mathematics, and so on. But it's not just our averages that are high. Our children from lower income backgrounds substantially outperform children from lower income backgrounds in the advanced countries. In fact, our children from low income backgrounds do better than the average for the advanced countries. They do better than the average for Switzerland, France, Germany, Sweden. Just imagine that. Our children from lower income backgrounds do better than the average children in those advanced countries. And that is a simple summary of the quality of our system as a whole. The teachers, the principals and vice principals, the whole system that ensures that quality is spread across the system and is not just in a few schools. But again, we have to do more than that. Do more than provide a high base of quality. We need deeper interventions to help those who are falling behind, just like we do in the preschool sector. Today, we have the smallest class sizes and the highest expenditure for students who are further behind in their studies. That's already the case, but we're going to do more. We're hiring more teachers, more teacher counselors, more professionals of every type to be in our schools to strengthen the whole school team to help every student in need. If a student is in need, we'll make sure that he or she is supported. And it requires not just support in the classroom, but outside the classroom. We're going to step that up in the next few years. We're also preventing a digital divide. Substantial step up in resources to ensure that everyone, no matter how poor your family is, has broadband, has a laptop or a computer at home to use. $6 a month for broadband. And in fact, if you're on the MOE financial assistance scheme, you don't have to pay for your laptop or computer. We're also reducing the differentiation between children when they're young. We've evolved significantly from the old streaming system. We first did away with primary school streaming more than 10 years ago. Now we are moving towards full subject-based banding in secondary schools, moving away from the whole streaming system. It's an educational aim because it helps students to discover their strengths in specific subjects rather than be categorized as strong or weak overall. But it also has a social aim. It also enables students to mix more with each other and to interact more with each other as they grow up, and never think that I'm stronger than someone else or I'm weaker than someone else as you grow up. We all have strengths and weaknesses. We've got to know each other. We've got to grow up together and interact with each other as much as possible. And that too is an important objective. So those are the younger years. We are achieving progress, but there's more to be done. As we enter working life, we've got to make sure that every Singaporean is on a moving escalator. Everyone. Doesn't matter where you start from, but you've got to be on that moving escalator. And COVID, of course, poses special challenges. We've got to make sure, as DPM Heng Swee Keat says, that today's generation of young people entering the workforce do not become a lost generation or a COVID generation, where they not only miss out on the first step, but their incomes, their skills journey is permanently diminished. And we will make sure that doesn't happen in Singapore. We'll have to make sure that middle-aged Singaporeans and mature workers do not find that the escalator has suddenly stopped midway through their career. Every generation must be on a moving escalator, and we take very seriously the need for fair treatment of our middle-aged and mature Singaporeans in the job market. Employers will not be able to give easy excuses for not hiring a middle-aged or mature Singaporean. How are we doing this? It's not just by rules. We are doing it through a massive effort to invest in skills of every Singaporean. Young, middle-aged, mature. No country has embarked on it on the scale that we are doing today. A massive infusion of skills at every stage of one's career. We can do it because we have a system that involves a tripartite partnership, and we have a system that involves not just government resources, but the trust that if you go through skills training, something good is going to come out of it. You're going to be able to get onto a ladder in your career that sees improvement in wages, improvement in responsibilities, and how much we can each contribute in our careers. But the first order of business is to prevent unemployment from spiraling up in Singapore. Keep it low. This is a critical, immediate issue. I'll give you a few comparisons because they're quite instructive. If you look at countries that, like Singapore, have had low levels of unemployment, Germany, Hong Kong, even the United States, until December, had a very low rate of unemployment. In fact, the lowest in a very long time in the US, about 3% or slightly higher than 3%. We were countries with low unemployment. In Singapore, it's still very low. Our unemployment numbers have gone up by much less than 10,000 people, so unemployment is a little above 3%. But in those countries, and I'm talking about countries which had low unemployment, it has now shot up. In Germany, it's 6.4%. In Hong Kong, it's close to 6%. In the US, it's at about 13%, although the economists say the true figure is more like 17, 18%. If we had that increase in unemployment that even Hong Kong and Germany have seen, and those are well-run economies, if we had that increase in unemployment, we will have today not less than 10,000 people more becoming unemployed, but 60 to 70,000 Singaporeans becoming unemployed. If we had the increase in unemployment that the US has seen, we would have today well over 250,000 Singaporeans becoming unemployed. How have we avoided that? There is, of course, the job support scheme. Major support for employers to help Singaporeans keep their jobs. But it's more than that, because Germany also has had a very generous job support scheme equivalent. They call it Kurzarbeit. Hong Kong has a scheme to support employers as well. We've also avoided it because there's trust in the system. Employers know the government is serious and trust the government to do the right thing to preserve jobs. And Singaporeans themselves are responsible for this state of affairs, of keeping unemployment down, because they themselves have been skilling themselves over the years and are playing their part. So that's our system. Tripartite coordination, trust in each other, and everyone knowing that the government will do what it takes to ensure that we do not see what happens in all these countries. And I haven't spoken about the worst examples, by the way, around the world. I've chosen examples of countries which had low unemployment, but we want to avoid what they have seen. Avoid 60 to 70,000 more Singaporeans suddenly becoming unemployed, let alone 250,000. It is a major effort. The National Jobs Council is hard at work, but I think our basic approach is worth summarizing. Far better that we put government resources into subsidizing jobs and skills than into subsidizing unemployment. $2 billion jobs and skills package. Far more beneficial to Singaporeans than a $2 billion unemployment benefits package. They're both aimed at helping people who lose a job, but far better that we help him or her get back into the workplace, if ideally for a permanent job. If there's not enough permanent jobs in the short term, then be on an attachment and get some structured training that provides a pathway to a permanent job. Far better that way, because then people feel they are useful, they're picking up new skills, and they've got a pathway to a permanent job in future. That's basically our approach. And of course, it's supplemented with a COVID support grant while people have seen a significant hit to their incomes or lost their jobs, and supplemented by even grants for those who want to start new businesses. And some of our unemployed are in fact starting new businesses, and they have grant schemes available for them. So that's basically the first and most immediate challenge. Avoid a surge of unemployment in Singapore. But there is a broader, longer-term challenge. We've got to sustain something that's been going well in Singapore, and that is the upward movement in incomes on the part of the majority of Singaporeans. The average Singaporean, the person, what they call the median worker, median income earner, the person right in the middle of the income ladder, has seen a very significant increase in incomes in the last decade. In fact, by 1/3, about 32%. 32% increase in incomes in real terms after accounting for inflation. 10 years ago, median incomes were about $2,900. Now, in nominal terms, it's $4,600. After adjusting for inflation, it's still 32%. Very substantial increase. Very few countries at the same level of development as Singapore, the same advanced country status, have seen that continuous increase in incomes. How is it achieved? Fundamentally, because we have raised productivity. One of the urban myths that circulate every time we have elections is that we failed on our productivity journey. It's just not true. We had a tough decade at the start of the 2000s. That first decade of the 2000s was a tough one for productivity. We had barely 1% productivity growth. We decided to shift gears on many different fronts: foreign worker policy, incentives for firms to upgrade, including our SMEs, upskilling, and skills future. And we achieved results. Our productivity growth in the last decade, we had targeted for it to be 2 to 3% per year on average over the decade. We have in fact achieved more than we expected. It has grown by 2.4% per worker, but actually if you take it per work hour, which is the best measure of productivity, it has gone up by 2.8% per year. What that means is that over 10 years, productivity went up by 1/3, just like median wages. Median wages and productivity both went up by 1/3. That's a story that is not seen elsewhere in the advanced world. And we have to find ways of sustaining it. Sustain that moving escalator that comes from continuous improvement in technologies, skills, and movement towards better jobs. There's some areas of weakness. Our construction sector still lags the advanced countries by a large margin. And we're making a major effort to re-gear the construction sector in the coming years and to create good jobs for Singaporeans. Everything from logistics planners, safety officers, machine operators on the site, machine operators off-site for prefabrication, and engineers. Many good jobs for Singaporeans. We're going to do a lot more to upgrade productivity in the construction sector. But overall, remember, this has been a success story. Productivity has moved up significantly in Singapore. We're now in the upper tier of advanced countries in our level of productivity and our level of median incomes. That is the summary of our economic strategies. We have moved into the upper tier of advanced countries in productivity and incomes. But we, again, just like we do when kids are young, we need a special focus on those who are further behind. And we have a special focus on our lowest income workers. They too have seen a very significant increase in incomes. In fact, more than the median worker, more than the average. Our workers in the lower income group, those at around the 20th percentile of the income ladder, have seen a close to 40% increase in wages in the last 10 years. In real terms, their income, their pay of the 20th percentile worker used to be about $2,500 10 years ago. It used to be about $1,500 10 years ago. It's now $2,500. That's in nominal terms, but when you adjust it for inflation, it's a close to 40% increase. And that's before taking into account workfare, which the government adds on top of their wages, which is also very significant. For an older worker, workfare plus the special employment credit is an extra 40% on top of what the employer pays the worker. How have we achieved this? How have we achieved this very significant uplift in wages for our lower paid workers? The progressive wage model is working. We started with cleaners and security guards and landscape technicians. Now we are moving to lift technicians. The bus industry is also taking it up. And we are going to spread it across all sectors, work out practical ways with each industry where the progressive wage model can put everyone on a ladder of skills and wages. It's better than a minimum wage, which is only the first step. It is a ladder of skills and wages that helps our lower income workers move up. So this is not growth at all costs, as is sometimes claimed. It's never been growth at all costs. It's growth to provide quality jobs for every Singaporean, and particularly for those who start off with low-paid jobs. It is growth to enable them to move up the ladder with skills, better respect for the job, and a sense that they are able to contribute together with everyone else. It's leading to a more equitable workplace. Step by step, we've been doing this. We haven't gone for dramatic moves all of a sudden. And why? Why are we doing this step by step and with great care in the design of these schemes? Because our aim isn't just productivity growth and wage growth for those who have jobs. Our aim is also to prevent large numbers of people from losing their jobs. We're doing something that not many countries do. We want to achieve very low rates of unemployment as well as a good rate of growth of productivity and incomes. Some countries achieve low unemployment by having everyone at work but not seeing much improvement at work. Some countries go for restructuring of the whole economy. Technology replaces workers, workers leave the workforce, unemployment goes up. We've got to avoid both those options. We've got to keep unemployment down, keep people at work, but help everyone move up a ladder in the course of their careers, where technology improves the job, where people's skills go up, and where wages go up. That's our approach. Provide jobs for everyone, but give everyone better jobs over time. And that requires a step-by-step approach, not a sudden or drastic approach that risks people losing their jobs, but a steady approach that gives people confidence that they're improving in their jobs and gives employers confidence that the government is going to work with them to help them to upgrade productivity, particularly in our SME sector, so they don't have to shed workers, but they can improve jobs and see their profits stay afloat at the same time. Over time, what this will also mean, as wages go up for cleaners, security guards, and in fact a whole layer of workers who are previously doing low-paid jobs and now have to move up. Over time, what this will mean is that some costs will go up. The cost of conservancy in a condominium, the cost of cleaning and office premises, costs will go up. And all of us as Singaporeans will have to pay slightly higher costs. But that is a small cost to pay for building a fairer and more equitable society where everyone is moving up together. It's a small cost to pay. We pay a much larger cost if we end up with a divided society. We have to avoid that. Let me move now to the third stage of this agenda, which is how we provide our seniors that sense of security and that ability to live life to the fullest, even in their silver years. I want to talk about this briefly because every time we have an election, we have very nice sounding promises on what should be done to help seniors. Everyone should be able to take their money out of the CPF. People should get their payouts from the CPF much earlier. Government should pay for healthcare costs, either by paying for Medishield premiums for everyone or some other ways of paying for healthcare costs. And it's not surprising that this comes up in elections, but I just want to explain that many of these measures will end up hurting the people they're trying to help. And let me just explain this briefly. In country after country, if you attempt to do away with a social security system where government takes responsibility and ensures that people have enough retirement savings and the savings will see them through their senior years, if you just leave it to individuals, what you find is that society becomes more divided and it becomes more unequal in the years when people are the most vulnerable, which is their older years. It happens in society after society. If you leave it to individuals to make decisions of their own, and each individual deciding how to invest their funds or spend their monies, we just end up with more inequality. It's happened abroad. In the United States today, because they've gone for a more market-based system, if you look at people in the bottom 20 to 30% of their population, they now enter retirement with negative net worth, which means that their debts exceed their savings. Negative net worth, no savings. Very serious situation. Same story in the other countries that have simply gone for liberalization. They face political pressures and they liberalize. Some countries like Denmark and Finland move towards providing earlier payouts from their social security system or their pension system, and they're now trying to reverse course. We must do what is in the interests of those who need help most, the lower income group and the middle income group. Provide flexibility, and we've evolved the CPF system to provide a lot more flexibility. But understand the basic rationale of the CPF system, of Medishield Life, and a lot of our other schemes in the older years. The basic rationale is that we've got to take collective responsibility for each other. We cannot leave each other to fend for ourselves. We cannot say that everyone decides for themselves and somehow things are going to end up rosy. Some people will take care of themselves very well, and in every society, the rich end up somehow being able to take care of themselves and doing better. And the poor end up in tougher straits, in more difficult circumstances. We have to take collective responsibility for each other, and in the silver years, that is most important. We have to share risks. You don't know who's going to live longer than the others. You don't know who's going to have the misfortune of having a serious illness. And we don't know who's going to be at the wrong end of life's vicissitudes. But we've got to share risk together. And that's the whole aim of CPF Life, Medishield Life, and now CashShield Life. Plus, the government providing additional support to help those in the lower income group and the middle income group in their silver years, which is what we're doing. If you look at our significant subsidies for Medishield Life for the lower and middle income groups, if you look at the extra interest rate that we pay on CPF balances, particularly once you turn 55 and beyond, it's a very significant subsidy. It's not just about people making their own payments and contributions. The government is putting in significant additional support if you are lower income or lower middle income especially, through CPF, through Medishield Life, and through now silver support, which comes out of our government budget. And silver support, as DPM Heng has announced, is going to be significantly enhanced starting from January next year, up to $900 every 3 months, which means $300 a month. So when you think of that system. It involves us taking collective responsibility, sharing risks, and not saying every individual on their own. It also involves the government providing additional support for the poor and the middle income group. If you go instead for a system where the government simply pays for everyone, it has great appeal of simplicity, but it leads to greater inequality. Because if the government has to pay for everyone, it means the better off people get the same benefits as the poor. And it also means, and we've seen this in so many societies, that you end up with higher taxes on the middle income group. Yes, the rich can pay somewhat more taxes, but there's no way in which the sums will add up without also raising taxes significantly for the middle income group, which is the way it is in all the advanced countries that people sometimes think of as some sort of dream society. Just look at the situation today. If you take the average Singaporean, the median Singaporean who's right at the middle of the income ladder, he or she pays about 2% income tax rate, 0 or 2%, and a GST rate. In the advanced countries, if you take the average, the income tax paid by that average person will be about 17 to 18%, and the GST rate about 19 to 20%. When you add it all up, the average person in those advanced societies pays more than 1/3 of their incomes to the government every month in taxes. More than 1/3. In fact, in the Scandinavian countries, it's well over 40%. So imagine in Singapore, our median income is $4,600. It'll mean that well over $1,000 a month will be paid to the government. So nothing is for free. When we talk about the government paying for everyone in healthcare, or the government having to subsidize all manner of other social schemes, think not just about the fact that it's costs passed on to the government, but think about who's really paying. Everyone else is going to have to pay for it, and we have to think about the fairest system of taxes and payments. We should keep to a system where taxes remain low on our middle class. Keep it that way. Of course, as every society gets older, taxes have to go up because our healthcare expenditures will go up. But try to keep taxes as low as possible on the middle class and use government revenues to help those who need it most, which is the poor, the lower middle income group, and to some extent, the middle income group as a whole. Don't just raise taxes across the board because government should pay for everything. It's a very important point. Some promises look appealing, but they actually lead to greater inequality over time. Think hard about the need for a fair system, a progressive system, and a sustainable system. And that's basically what we're trying to achieve in Singapore. Let me conclude by talking about the broader society and responsibilities that we are trying to build, besides the government policies that are involved. Government policies when you're young, when you're in working life, and when we're in our senior years. Government policies are important, and there has to be a role for government rather than leaving things to the market or leaving things to individuals. But it's also about all of us. It's about all of us getting involved by taking an interest in others, particularly those who are less well off than us, or those who come from different social backgrounds, and all of us taking the initiative. And the task of building an inclusive society post-COVID, after COVID, is going to be a challenging task that involves all of us. And I would say that we have to evolve further from where we were in the years past. You know, if you think of the most popular Hokkien song over the decades, maybe even today, Ai Pia, Cha E Ia. The most interesting ditty within the song. What happens in life is determined 30% by the will of the heavens, and 70% by hard work, or in those days, bitter hard struggle. 30% determined by the heavens, 70% by bitter hard work. I think we should retain a social ethos where people work hard for themselves, take responsibility, and take pride in standing on their own feet. But you can't rely on the heavens. You can't leave people to fend for themselves either. That 30% has to be community. We have to take collective responsibility for each other. Starting with Kids Start, starting when the kids are very young in the same neighborhood, take an interest and find ways of supporting them, all the way to our silver years. We have to take more responsibility for each other. And for our younger generation in particular, this is actually a challenge for a generation. Building an inclusive society that doesn't just mimic efforts in other societies, but does it our way. Does it in a way that it doesn't impose a heavy burden on Singaporeans at large. Does it in a way that allows for initiative, people getting involved, starting their own initiatives and joining them up together. Does it in a way where we're not just doing things on our own, but we're creating a cohesive network that involves spiraling up hope, spiraling up opportunities. And I think for our younger generation, this is a very exciting challenge. What each of you and groups of you and friends can do to build an inclusive society and a green and sustainable society. Get involved in the neighborhood. Work with kids who are less privileged. Get involved in helping working adults, particularly those who've had lesser education. Get involved in helping the elderly get used to a digital era. Get involved with initiatives of your own and find ways of joining it with what we are doing. Get involved in what DPM Heng launched, Singapore Together. It's not about the government, it's about Singapore Together. Find your niche, find your passion, the areas you want to work in, and let's help spiral up a whole system, a whole society. It can be done. We can emerge from COVID not more divided, but with a more cohesive society. We can become an inclusive society that is not just mimicking what others have done. We can become a society which is inclusive for the next generation, not just today. And we can become a much more deeply multiracial society, which is a journey of its own that we have to pursue. We can become a better Singapore. Thank you.